1 year ago, Salt Lake and Minnesota both saw their seasons come to an end, one step shy of championship weekend. But through hard work, determination, commitment, and sacrifice, the Shred and the Windchill are now ready to debut at the AUDL signature event. Salt Lake set to showcase its brilliant and explosive offense, while Minnesota's dynamic defenders bring their own big ideas, looking to stifle the Shred in front of their passionate hometown Windchill crowd. The coveted final spot in tomorrow's championship game hangs in the balance as the Salt Lake Shred battle the Minnesota Windchill. Next. Which one of these two teams will meet the New York Empire tomorrow night? The Minnesota Windchill at 11-2, the Salt Lake Shred at 12-1. We welcome you back to TCO Stadium here in the Twin Cities. Championship weekend Friday night continues, and after the New York Empire just demolished the Austin Soul, we're hoping for a tighter game tonight. Good evening again, everybody. Evan Lepler with the former AUDL Coach of the Year, Brian Jones, Czar of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. And look, we just saw a mismatch of epic proportions despite the Soul's promising start. It was a bloodbath. Are we in for another big mismatch here, or what do you think?
I don't think so, Evan. I think this has all of the ingredients to be a very interesting game because you've got a road favorite. Salt Lake Shred, best offense in the league, highest scoring offense in the league. Sure, they're the favorite, but they have to play in front of a hostile crowd against a very good defensive team in the Windchill. I think we got ourselves a game.
It's going to be a great game because Minnesota has this home field advantage. And not only do they have it in terms of the crowd, but they have it in terms of the wind. Their pulling game is immaculate. They can put themselves in a great position defensively to use their smart defenders. They went up against Colorado earlier this season, the division rival against Salt Lake, and they got shellacked, but we think they've learned a lot from that moment.
We saw the elements be such a significant factor in the first semifinal tonight. But the Salt Lake Shred are the best offense in the league statistically during the regular season. How do the elements factor in, and what can Minnesota do to try and slow down this Salt Lake attack?
Well, I think they've learned from Salt Lake's division rival. They've installed some new defensive schemes since that game against Colorado, which is going to help slow down the Salt Lake offense. And it doesn't matter how good you are. We saw New York, which had set the record for the best game all time. Fewest turnovers in a game, 4 turnovers coming to this, and struggle in the wind. I don't think anybody's going to be immune from the struggles in the wind tonight.
Well, and I think this Salt Lake Shred team led by Jordan Kerr, who's had such a fantastic season. See him there on the left side of your screen with the disc in his hands, number 66, and Kerr has just been special. I mean, he can get open, downfield, turn around, throw a beautiful 70-yard huck on a dime on both sides. He's lefty, so dangerous, and I think when he has played his best, the Shred have been untouchable.
Well, it's been just a sea change from the previous year where the Salt Lake Shred offensive identity was we're going to huck it no matter what. We got big-time athletes, and now they're one of the stingiest offenses in the league, playing to possession, and Kerr's led that transformation. It is a tall task for Minnesota, but in this wind, that helps you, right? Salt Lake against LA in the division championship game was not tested whatsoever.
The Shred have had 10 turns or less in 4 of their last 6 games. They're averaging under 11 turns a game in their last 6. But with the conditions, they're almost guaranteed to be above that number tonight.
Especially from what we saw from the New York Empire in the previous game. Sure, they blew out the Austin Soul, but they had a lot of turnovers. I mean, their O-line had more than 10 turnovers, coming off of a game in which they had just 4 total turnovers as a team. I don't think we should expect pristine ultimate here, especially because the Windchill, they're going to be trying to muck this game up. They don't want the Shred to just be able to go and play this beautiful offense like they have all season. Central Division team, they're honed this defense for years. They're going to give Salt Lake trouble. Can the Shred figure it out? That's the question.
They have the offense to do it, right? They figured it out this year. They've been installed some new veterans into the offense. Elijah Jaime, Grant Lindsley, who has big game experience. And you would expect that at some point in time, the Salt Lake offense will figure this wind out if they don't already come in with a great game plan. But really the key to the Salt Lake game plan is get a fast start on defense. Bryce Merrill talked about that in the press conference, that their defense has really not provided a lot of pressure and just let the other team make mistakes and take advantage of that. And so for them, in their first championship weekend, they have to have a way to come out with that fire, because they have kind of been known as this mild-mannered group of nice guys without maybe lacking a little bit of edge. And Grant Lindsley, that veteran presence, is trying to install that with a bunch of smack talk, his own words.
Salt Lake's first ever appearance at championship weekend tonight, their 28th game in franchise history. Minnesota has been plugging away to get to this point since 2013. And here they are at championship weekend tonight, getting set to play their 142nd game in franchise history. But there's never been a bigger game than this one in front of their home fans. And this crowd is going to be a factor, as you see former member of the Minnesota Wind Chill, Grant Lindsley, take the field. This is such a young Shred team that adds this dynamo of an accomplished ultimate star in Lindsley, who's had such a fascinating journey, such a fascinating person. And his personality has kind of gradually seeped into this team. His Zen intensity, if you can call it that.
He has incredible intensity. He brings a different level of experience, and it's almost 20 years of high-level ultimate experience playing for Team USA, playing for high-level club teams, and then making his name in the ABL with big game performances. And the last two championship weekends he's attended in 2017 and 2019 for San Francisco and New York, respectively. And you talk about, Evan, this team being young, and Austin sure showed its age in that last game, but Salt Lake feels different. They look like a team that can go up against some of the league's best defenses and find ways to score efficiently, to take the right shots. I think you have to give a ton of credit to Bryce Merrill and what he's done to transform the squad.
Yeah, and it starts at the youth level, up through the college ranks. Bryce Merrill has installed people as part of his coaching tree all across the Salt Lake City and Utah scene. And so players are coming into this program, even if they're still in college, with the fundamentals correct. And that, I think, is why they've been so good despite being so young. The question is, how will they handle the moment here? It's one thing to go on the road during the regular season. It's a whole different thing to go on the road during the postseason in front of a gigantic crowd like this with all of the energy.
Adam Ruffner said to me in between games, usually the rule is that when the first semifinal is a dud, the second one's an all-timer. And we'll see if we get paid off with that type of epic here this evening. Bryce Merrill's shred against Ben Feldman's Wind Chill. One late lineup scratch for the Wind Chill that we want to mention. Josh Klain, the veteran handler, one of the top throwers in the history of the league from an assist standpoint. He is out tonight. A late scratch being replaced in the Wind Chill lineup by Mickey Walsh. Klain's a veteran who, I mean, in the words of Chicago coach Dave Woods, he said no one deserves a chance to play at championship weekend more than Josh Klain. But Klain will be a spectator from the sidelines tonight instead of trying to add to his career total of 290 all-time assists. So this Wind Chill offense without Klain, look, Will Brandt has taken more responsibility. Abe Coffin has been gradually ascending since returning from injury with a disaster performance against Colorado. What's the recipe tonight for the Wind Chill offense to get holds against the Salt Lake athletes?
Well, we need more of what they've been doing lately. It's been a clunky season for them, but when we've seen Will Brandt get involved more and get more touches, they've been really good. And I think we saw some really nice signs from them in that Indy game. They're going to have to take a step forward, though, against the Salt Lake team that can definitely punish your turnovers.
Looks like we're going to see the Wind Chill offense on the opening point of the game. Colin Berry, Brian Vanoka, and Brandon Mattis, captains.
This is a classic matchup, you know. Salt Lake top 5, top 3 in most offensive categories in the league. Minnesota, top 5 in most of the defensive categories in the league. And sure, you could talk about Central Division versus West Division and the quality of competition, but you know what? This Minnesota team has showed us that they can play great defense against anybody.
Why we play these moments, right? Hey, more than anything, you guys, hey, I know all you're gonna fucking win tonight. That's not a question. Louder! I can't hear you, man! You guys fucking enjoy every moment of this fucking game. Woo! And hey, think about what that's gonna feel like at 9:30, right? What do you want that to feel like? Right? Who's gonna make that first play? Jimmy? Who's got it? PJ? Hey! Wake up, the ball's out, play aggressive, return it, give this back. We're out on Wednesday. Have pride in giving the fucking disc back. Hey, it's showtime, boys. Let's go.
Well, not the cleanest pump-up speech for a pregame huddle, but certainly has me fired up, ready to go. As the wind chill will take the field on offense. And Salt Lake's D-line will try to quiet down this Minnesota-flavored crowd here in Eagan. It's been 2018 since a AUDL team hosted championship weekend that they played in. And of course, back at Breese Stevens Field 5 years ago, the Madison Radicals had the look in the field as they beat LA in the semis and then took down Dallas in the finals. New York awaits the winner. Will it be Salt Lake from the west or Minnesota from the Central? Eugene LaRue set to launch the opening pull for this Utah franchise that has taken the league by storm since joining a year ago. Here we go, the shred and the wind chill. Tristan Vandy Mortel has played a good bit of offense this year as the pull sails out the back. He's been on the D-line lately, but with Klain stepping out, scratched before the game. It's Vandy Mortel out there on offense with Coffin, Taylor, Vanoka, Quinn Snyder, Colin Berry, and Will Brandt, who will initiate from the brick, picked up by a very pesky defender, Chad Jorgensen. Minnesota coming off their best offensive game of the season in the Central Finals against the AlleyCats. And yet even in that game, they were broken early. And Salt Lake will have an early break chance tonight. Devin Terry gets his fingertips in there for the block.
The speed of this Salt Lake team could be the biggest challenge for Minnesota. We see the run-through block here on the first possession.
Jordan Taylor trying to get it back, but it's Kyle Weinberg for Salt Lake. In the hands of Nathan Huff. Back to LaRue. Will Selfridge did not have any stats in the West Division final. No goals, no assists, no blocks, but playing D-line. His coaches raved about his effort, but there's a throwaway as Taylor earns possession back for Minnesota.
And the opening jitters, just like we saw in the Austin, New York game, continue.
Abe Coffin with a blading forehand. That Quinn Snyder backpedaling, tumbling down, falls in for the wind chill score.
That is a great sign for the wind chill. Abe Coffin getting going early is exactly what you want to see. The wind chill Abe has not really kind of had a great game yet this whole season. He was dealing with some injuries. But if he can have a big game, and we have seen him have some huge games in the postseason in the past, that's a very good sign for the wind chill.
They recovered from the opening drop or block, not sure what to call it. And then classic blade move by a great thrower.
Yeah, if you catch it and there's no one there,
That's one of the things that I kept thinking about coming into tonight, is that we've seen Abe Coffin go off in playoff games in the past. And it's very possible he could be the very best player on the field tonight. First O point here for Salt Lake, and this Shred O-line has had a historic season. Sean Canole and Jordan Kerr looking big early, seeking Dunabile. Dunabile on the second effort brings it down against Brett Bergmeyer.
What a revelation Jace Dunabile has been for this Shred team. I mean, it really feels like he's come on later in the season as well. Kerr sees his man, puts it up there, ends up hanging a little bit more than you'd like to see. That's the wind in the stadium. Bergmeyer tries to make a play, good effort, and great concentration from Dunabile.
Like you said, the great concentration. And this wind is going to have an effect, but the question is for how long. When the sun goes down, usually the wind stops.
In each of the last 6 seasons in the AUDL, the team that was tops in the league in hold percentage won the title. Salt Lake enters the night #1 in the league in hold percentage, and the deep shot goes up for Marty Adams. Joel Clutton has size, chasing from behind, and Clutton takes care of it.
An almost unintentional snake in the grass, letting Marty Adams go free. And we see the wind still playing a factor. That's hanging up in the air. Ryan Dross talked about at the end of last game, any disc that goes above 10 feet is going to get carried by the wind.
Second break chance for the Shred. Here's Tony Moonga. Had a fantastic Callahan in the West Final against Los Angeles. Downfield, Chad Jorgensen resets. Braden Eberhard missed the LA game with an injury. He's back tonight. And Bryce Merrill talked about the value of having Eberhard as an extra handler for this D-line. Max DeLynn.
Really good motion. Just quick passes. Hard for the defense to catch up for Minnesota.
Jorgensen swings it for Eberhard. He's got a couple open targets, and the Shred punch it in. It's Max DeLynn, who's just getting ready to return to Minnesota for his sophomore year of college, going against some of his college teammates tonight. And he puts Salt Lake in front for the first time.
One of the best rookies in the college division last year, playing for the University of Minnesota, and putting a stamp on this game early. And this was a wide open shot. Adams, you can see he checks behind him because he notices this disc is hanging in the air. And Clutton has enough time to get down there and knock it away. Lucky for the Shred to get this break chance, but then great offense on the counterattack.
It really was. It was sensational.
Moving it sideline to sideline.
And just keeping the advantage.
It looked very characteristic of what we've seen from the Shred when they've been at their best all season long. The purpose with which they move the disc offensively and with their D-line.
And now a bit of a zone. Just throwing out a different flavor, a 2-4-1 with Clutton hanging back out in the deep space. I mean, with the way the wind it is, you can just dare him to throw it deep.
You know, this line for the wind chill might be their most important line tonight, a line that takes the field after they get broken, because they could get broken once. They just can't afford to get broken multiple times in a row, because Salt Lake's too good offensively.
And it's been a problem for them this season.
Open hammer, hangs in the air, but DeClercq able to make the catch and then slicing it through the small space into the hands of Paul Krennick. So it's a good couple of minutes for Grey Duck here at TCO Stadium. First DeLynn for Salt Lake, and now Krennick for Minnesota.
Some young stars getting on the board early. Dangerous as that hammer drops in, and then squeezing it through 2 defenders into Krennick. Krennick, U24 selection.
And you say dangerous, but there was so much margin here that it only became dangerous at the very end. It's one of those things where the old school coaches would hate hammers. I mean, that was the lore 20 years ago. Don't throw a hammer. And now you got to encourage those type of creative throws, especially get out of the double teams.
Ryan Vinoka's crossed over and played a lot of D-line throughout his wind chill career. Said today at the press conference he loves playing offense, but he also recognizes that he is a valuable contributor to the D-line out there here for the wind chill.
Well, poaching in the lanes from the wind chill, try to slow down the vertical attack of this Salt Lake team.
Sean Knoll zips it downfield. Dunabile gives Lindsley the touch. Kerr's going deep. Lindsley looks for the reset. McKay Jorgensen. McKay's just 21. His older brother Luke on the O-line's 25. And the first break chance for the wind chills coming up right here. Dunabile unable to make that one-handed snag by the sideline.
We haven't seen a mistake like that in a while from the Salt Lake offense. Going back a couple of games where they just throw it away. They don't give up very many freebies like that.
Noah Hansen makes the first cut coming up the line, marked by McKay Jorgensen. And this wind chill D-line work it, and how aggressive will Ben Feldman be, perhaps calling a timeout? He's right next to the sideline official as the huck goes up, looking for Vinoka. Dunabile's there, but Vinoka skies him and shows it off for the Minnesota break.
Bevon, that's what he does. And he doesn't care who's matched up on him. He is game to go up in the air and make a play. And maybe just a poor decision on the throw there. Very tight to get that throw where you want it. And it eludes Dunabile, and then going the other way. If you got Vinoka with steps, that's just such a tempting target.
You got to put it. Earlier it was Dunabile who had the concentration to make the catch. Now it's Bevon coming up with it. He jumped early for that one. He knew Dunabile was coming and he had to make a play.
Give the assist to Cameron Lacey. Another wind chill rookie who's been a nice addition to their D-line. One break apiece through the first 6 minutes. And Minnesota has a 3-2 lead. And mishandled on the pull. Salt Lake's gonna have to begin from the very back of the end zone here against the double team. And this has been the wind chill's bread and butter throughout the season. Surely Salt Lake has spent a lot of time practicing these exact situations over the past couple weeks to get ready for Minnesota.
Yeah, it looked scary for a moment, and now it's back to business as usual.
Lindsley bumped by Adams.
Minnesota still sticking with the double team early on. And you can tell Salt Lake's ready for it. They just move it with such pace. They don't stick with one progression for too long. And it makes it so hard to play defense against a team like this where they're just going to be willing to go to the next look. But another freebie, another unforced error.
Just a slightly misaligned throw released by McKay Jorgensen. And another opportunity here for the wind chill D-line.
Great switch downfield with Miller and Lindsley.
We get a timeout from the sideline. And the wind chill fans encouraged to get loud by the Minnesota sidelines. An opportunity to take a 4-2 lead here. Just under 5 minutes to play in the first.
Well, it's been early wins for the wind chill defense. It's not even necessarily that they're coming up with blocks. They're slowing down Salt Lake, making them think a little bit longer before they throw those passes, and those hesitations can create those turnovers on throws you normally see this Salt Lake team complete. And this is exactly the defensive game plan that they were thinking about coming into this game.
I mean, Ben Feldman talked about it earlier today. They went to Colorado. They saw the type of defense they're playing. And they said, you know what, we need to upgrade a little bit. We got shellacked. And that got them ready for this game. Oh, I've been there. Ben Feldman telling his players, you can celebrate, but get off the field afterwards. I need to call the next line.
Jordan Taylor finds Will Brandt.
I love Will Brandt's ability to get up lines and create that space. I mean, he's such a big guy with length, but the ability to just squeeze underneath.
Colin Perry shooting it. Jordan Taylor cannot come up with it because Ben Ashton accelerated for the block from behind.
Wow, that is an incredible block to get from that position. He was not in the driver's seat positionally and still managed to get a hand on it.
Weinberg in the middle for Moonga. Luke Jorgensen here. This is a Salt Lake O point, but it would feel like a break, especially if Bryce Merrill can watch his D-line convert without having to take a timeout and get the offense back out there.
Well, it'd be intentional. He might say, let it ride. They've got the offensive line out there. Let's tire him out. It will almost function as a break, like you said.
Eberhard, lefty backhand for Ashton. Chad Jorgensen has it 11 yards shy of the goal line. Retreats a bit for Weinberg. And into the hands of Dehlin. And foul called on the mark. Michael Jordan called it on himself. Straddling that pivot foot of Dehlin. And into the end zone, the Shred score. It's a hold technically, but it feels a little bit bigger than just a normal O-line score. Weinberg punctuates the point.
And let's get another look at this block. I mean, this looks like a sure goal. What a play.
Somewhere old school coaches are screaming about same third huck rules. I mean, there's a reason why this is a tight window. It's a narrow part of the field. There's not much space to throw into. You have to place it perfectly. And a great play to catch up and get the block. But that's a tight decision.
It's also a catch that Jordan Taylor should make.
I think he was there first and just didn't come up with it. That's a big moment early in this game.
Sure is. 3-all now. 3:13 to play in the first. Of course, the Empire and the Soul were tied 3-all in the first quarter, too.
Don't remind me, Evan. It's a different game.
Certainly feels like it. Time will tell. Bergmeyer to Vinoka. Back to Bergmeyer. Product of the University of Kansas.
Both teams just doing an excellent job of keeping the disc moving. You can just see no hesitation in what they want to do, and it's making offense look easy.
Vinoka looking for Adam Selfridge, tries to make up the ground, and Will Selfridge hit the nuclear turbo button and said no.
I almost feel like he was baiting the throw. What a play. I mean, he was beat. And it just hangs long enough for him to get there. You see that athleticism of the Shred on display.
Welcome to the postseason stat sheet, Will Selfridge. Again, it looked like the right choice. It looked like a pretty good throw, and nearly a Callahan on the reverse possession. Knocked down by Ian McCoskey. Picked up by Sam Berglund. Back to DeClercq and Bergmeyer. This game has had plenty of early twists and turns. Minnesota unable to punch it in. DeClercq was out of bounds, but we got a foul called on the release of the throw. Heck of an effort from DeClercq, who may have hurt himself on the attempted greatest. He's grabbing that left shoulder, and he's asking for a sub. And that's a big storyline to watch, because we know how valuable that guy is defensively for Minnesota.
All defensive AUDL runner-up last season. Definitely their #1 option on this D-line.
Minnesota does keep the disc after the foul. Marty Adams trying to finish the point, and Krennic finds the space to put the wind chill in front 4-3. Another far from ordinary wind chill hold here in this first quarter.
Game feels very even so far. Some big plays by both sides. Kind of a weird reset decision there. Opens it back up for a short field score for the wind chill. Krennic on the board again.
It's 2 early goals for Krennic. His college teammate Max DeLynn has a goal and an assist so far. And of course the Gray Deck guys for the Empire weren't bad earlier tonight.
Certainly not.
All season long, Sam Berglund's pulls have been a difference maker, and you see how he angles it, makes it so hard to catch. That one wasn't as deep as some of the others, and Lindsley did a nice job of kind of corralling the ricochet off the ground. Canole for Lindsley. But de Klerk back on the field. That didn't take long for Dylan to feel better.
The next throw hasn't been there that much for Salt Lake. They'll get one, and then they have to hit the reset every time.
And that's kind of an aspect of what we're seeing from Minnesota's forced middle defenses. They're going to stop the continuation throw and try to force flow back the other way. And there's only a few players right now that are comfortable hitting those breaks.
Bobbled and dropped, a rare mistake from Jacob Miller, who's had such an efficient season for the Shred offense. Salt Lake is definitely giving the wind chill chances. Big hammer, Berglund for de Klerk. And they give it right back. Now, Salt Lake is less than 10 seconds and the disc stayed in bounds, so the clock is still ticking. And if you're Salt Lake right now, just don't turn it over. Jacob Miller got it off, but Will Chen's backhand, that is not.
Oh, missed opportunity there for the wind chill. Had 18 seconds on the clock when that hammer went up. Definitely had time to work from midfield down into the red zone. But they still have the lead here at the end of the first.
Yeah, one of the most off-kilter offensive quarters we've seen from the Shred all season. Wind chill up 4-3 after the first 12 minutes here in the second semifinal at championship weekend.
The hometown Minnesota wind chill with a 4-3 lead after one over the West Division champion Salt Lake Shred. Ian Toner with Alex Atkins, Colin Camp, Tuba Benson-Jaja. Alex, one of the things that you were keying in on was Salt Lake's turnovers coming from the younger guys, perhaps feeling the pressure under the lights.
Yeah, I think that Salt Lake's offense is looking smoother than Minnesota's, but they have had some uncharacteristic turnovers that maybe are due to nerves, especially from some of the younger players.
So we're talking about McKay Jorgensen. We're talking about Will Selfridge, who also had an early first quarter turnover against the New York Empire in their regular season matchup against that team. Colin, I was particularly puzzled by the end of quarter sequence. Berglund picks up, throws it to nobody. No urgency from Salt Lake after the turn either. You got any explanation for any of that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a confusing play on both parts. At first, there was no urgency from Minnesota. Then, Berglund makes a really weird decision. Obviously, in that case, I think you really want to hope for the last throw, and then you have to see Grant just walk it up and not even try to push. It didn't really make sense to me, but if you're the wind chill, this is exactly where you want to be after one.
Tuba, Salt Lake huddle, what are you saying?
I think if I'm the coach of Salt Lake, I'm okay with where we're at right now, right? We haven't played maybe our usual style of offense, and we're not down by 2 or 3 points.
Understood. Here we go. Gentlemen, second quarter coming up right here. Let's get you back up to the booth to Evan Lepler, Brian Jones, and Charlie Eisenhood.
Thanks, Toner. 4-3 is your first quarter score here at TCO Stadium. And Salt Lake on offense to begin the second, looking for the equalizer.
I loved what Tuba had to say. You couldn't have played kind of worse if you were Salt Lake in a lot of ways. And you're down one with the disc.
Looking deep for wide open Elijah Jaime. There's a snake in the grass. It's Paul Krennic, and Jaime can't come up with it. And there's no call. And the snake in the grass to begin the second quarter,
I think
leads
that's
to
exactly
a turn.
what we saw. Wow. They had 2 wide open cutters, so they thought.
And a low throw to give it right back. Berglund the error.
Just painful.
Kerr moves it for Dunabile. Over to Knoll, who was guilted into the snake in the grass decision. Here's Luke Jorgensen. Knoll coming across, and who's it going to be on? Which way are we going? They're going to call it against Minnesota. Well, there was certainly a little initial contact, and then Knoll showed it didn't appreciate the initial contact and threw one back.
And Knoll kind of braced for contact and got it, so he was kind of throwing his shoulder, but the contact's still coming from the defense. I think that's the right call by the refs.
I agree.
Knoll back for Luke Jorgensen. Elijah Jaime is wide open in the back right corner of the end zone, and Jordan Kerr saw what I did and finds him for the score. Pretty good contingent of Utah fans here in the Twin Cities, and we're tied 4-all.
Well, Charlie, you talked about keys of the game. Muck it up. If you're Minnesota, it is sufficiently mucked.
They run the trick play out of the quarter. They get the turnover, but they give it right back. And it's been a kind of a weird and wild game. Both O-lines coughing it up. D-lines having some success, but also making some kind of poor mistakes. And Krennic just sneaking off the sideline. And really it should have been caught, but enough pressure to cause the drop.
That's a little generous. I mean, that's a drop.
Yeah, but he had no idea he was going to be a defender there. He thought he was completely wide open. But Jaime ends up making good, catching the goal.
Winchill center to Vandy Mortel. Quinn Snyder coming underneath, and Ashton closing the gap fast. And a tough catch made by Marty Adams. Contact on the mark. Adams is going to get this one back, and it's going to be about a 20-25 yard difference in field position after the yardage on the foul. Take away the reset, that was about a 15-yard loss. Adams looking up the line, and he overshoots Vandy Mortel, who was open. Easily intercepted by Clutt, and he's got another first half block.
And now this D-line offense can get into a rhythm. And for Salt Lake, for as bad as you have played, you have a chance to take the lead here. Minnesota has had their opportunities.
Big deep shot fired from Ashton. And along the leaping snag made by Moonga. Johnny Hoffman has the break for Salt Lake.
And their D-line offense has looked quite good. Now they've had some turnovers, but we've seen them show full field flow. They were willing to grind unders. They're also willing to hit the deep shot. We saw it there.
And this turnover happens, and you can't see it on screen, but it's because of a double team of the dump. And so that leaves somebody open free. Marty Adams can't hit it. He's stressed in a high stall situation. Had somebody available. The creativity from the Salt Lake team defensively is something to really marvel at. And then after that, it's just plain old fun hucking the disc. Who doesn't like flick hucks? I mean, these Salt Lake throwers, they're used to throwing at elevation, so they got a little bit more boost in their juice every time they're throwing it, but they still like to put it deep.
Rolling it out the sideline, 10 yards across midfield. Grant Lindsley getting a deep point here. Shred basically have 4 D-lines, of which Lindsley's on one of them. Selfridge on the mark. And Minnesota with its easiest O-line conversion of the night, as Brett Bergmeyer takes care of it.
Yeah, super smooth. Attacking out of position defenders along the sideline.
A lot of pace, a lot of tempo. Both teams moving the disc quickly. And some tough catches needed so far
That's just good throw and go. Great fundamentals from Bergmeyer.
I mean, looking at the flags now, just looking at the win situation compared to last game, there's still some win, but it's coming way down, and that's going to make these offenses settle in. You just kind of feel like a little bit, it's early. You feel like Minnesota missed their opportunities here to go up by a couple breaks and really take control of this game. And maybe they have some more left here trying to go with the roller pole and double team. But Salt Lake, this offense has been uncharacteristically bad.
They're going to get Knoll for the travel this time, and they probably could have called a foul. They're throwing a little elbow into the chest of Mickey Walsh. Again, Knoll just looking for somewhere to go, and he finds McKay Jorgensen. Quickly to Dunabile, and now Kerr. Jacob Miller. Back to Jordan Kerr.
And that's the risk of the double team. You give up 50 easy yards in a fast break situation.
During the regular season, the Salt Lake Shred #2 in the league in red zone percentage. And you can see why. They're pretty smooth down there. DC was the only team that was better than Salt Lake in the red zone.
Discipline, too. They had a couple chances where they could have taken a shot into the end zone, but there was a defender poaching off, coming into the lane. They pump faked. They swung the disc. They waited for it to be an easy one. And that's one of the things that's made them so good.
Bryce Merrill intentionally designed this offense to look a little bit like Carolina's. Provide tons of options. Don't look at one look. And we're talking about the Carolina offense, of course, that won with a great performance in 2021. Don't get stuck looking at one person, one isolated look. Progress very quickly, get 3 to 4 looks. You don't have that much time with a 7-second stall count. And they just keep it moving. It's so hard to play defense against.
Shred 5 for 5 in the red zone. 2 for 3 on their Hucks. The Wind Chill are an ugly 1 of 6 on their Hucks so far, and yet they're only down by 1. Callahan opportunity for Moonga there. Stride for stride with Will Brandt. That's a nice throw. Barry bluffs the Huck. Coming underneath, it's Taylor. And he finds Vinoka wide open. We're seeing Salt Lake aggressively looking to double team some of Minnesota's cutters when they catch the disc. Will Brandt is a guy that Minnesota loves to have the disc as he locates Abe Coffin open in the end zone.
He had 54 touches against Indy in the Central Final, 7 assists. He was awesome, and you can see why they want him taking the shots. He's creative, he's fearless, and he has the talent to be able to execute.
He's very slippery for a tall player. He has the agility to get open and the length afterwards. You just can't mark somebody like this. He can just step out. He doesn't even need to step out. He just throws around him.
Grant listed at 6'4". And look, he's just 21 years old. I mean, he's still just a kid. Student at St. Olaf, a fixture at D3 Nationals. Another travel call on the sideline here. Daniel Wong, the head official for this semifinal here in Minnesota, made the call.
Well, Salt Lake prepared. They knew the double team was coming, and so they're trying to get out of it immediately.
It's a nice find. Lindsley connecting with Miller.
I love the way he looked downfield right before throwing that hammer, making the defense adjust to him, moving them with their eyes.
Lindsley's going deep. Miller lets it roll, but Krennic has the steps. Lindsley tried to go over the top, but Krennic was up to the task.
The new generation versus the old generation. Awesome stuff. Lindsley did everything he could to try to get back to make that play, but Krennic, better position.
Looking long again, Minnesota shooting this one for Tanner Barkis, and it did not have a great percentage of being completed from the release. Again, the Hucks have not been the recipe for success so far for the wind chill tonight. Bryce Merrill throws the timeout flag on the field and takes it. Stops the clock with 5 minutes and 12 seconds left in this second quarter.
That's an interesting timeout call. Maybe just wanted to rest. You normally don't see that when your offense is cruising down the field, but you can't take him with you.
He must have seen something he didn't like.
We saw him do that a couple times in the West Final against LA.
Trail counter. Yes. Front and stack. Front and stack. Continue break. Off the counter.
And here's another look at the shot to Lindsley, who had steps on his primary defender, but Krennic peels off, feels the throw coming, and just an awesome one-on-one. Second block for Krennic, who's really put his stamp on this game.
He's been Minnesota's best player so far.
I agree. I agree. A couple goals as well.
So after the brief rest, back to business as usual.
The Jorgensen brothers in the backfield. Get it to Kerr. Jordan's throw dropped in the end zone by Jace Dunabile.
How many of these bizarre errors have we seen from this Salt Lake offense tonight?
You got to think it's nerves. I mean, there's really no other explanation.
We get a timeout from Ben Feldman now. The second timeout of the point. This point began at the 6:44 mark, so just over 2 minutes off the clock. It's a Salt Lake O point, remember. It's Minnesota going for the break.
I'll give you some nervous turnovers in the first quarter. But with under 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, you just cannot be having point-blank drops in the end zone.
And yet, with 6-6, Minnesota hasn't been able to bury a break chance in a while. They had the opportunity to get several.
They're 1 for 4.
Both of these teams are just not performing at their best. And it's a question of who can take control.
The two teams are a combined 3 of 11 on Hucks. Minnesota's an ugly 1 of 7.
And with 2 timeouts now on this point, and time winding down here in the first half, this point becomes very important.
Dunabile just looking away. It looks like he was trying to celebrate that goal before he caught it.
Flood play doesn't really work.
Brandt. Oh my goodness. Colin Berry almost deflected that for Kyle Weinberg to get a gift of a Callahan.
Stall getting high.
Yeah, nowhere to go. And it's intercepted. Chad Jorgensen with the block and the assist. And the Salt Lake Shred with another circuitous hold, technically, for their O-line.
Minnesota now 1 for 6 on break chances. And this was just a high stall prayer thrown up into the teeth of the defense. And it's an easy red zone conversion for the Shred.
Chad Jorgensen's not quite on an Antoine Davis stretch of defense, but it's pretty close. I mean, that's his 7th block in his last 4 games. Going back to the regular season. Minnesota back on offense with an interesting line after the goal from Chad Jorgensen to Nathan Huff. Bobbled a little bit on the catch, but Adams able to reset for Krennic. He's just looking really cool and confident out there. Ian McCoskey, another youngster, former Radical. And the deep shot goes up for DeClerc. Clutton a chance for another block on a hanger. And that's going to be pass interference on Joel Clutton.
And he knew it.
DeClerc back to Berglund. Panoka open. Unable to get his feet in the end zone though. Shred red zone defense forcing the wind chill to work. McCoskey. And it's Moonga who tipped it. But Berglund keeps it alive. And then a low throw snagged by Bergmeyer. These Iceberg boys sure do keep it interesting.
Feels like Minnesota's surviving on pure adrenaline right now and some crowd fever.
Foul was called against the wind chill, so they're going to have to retreat 10 yards, and everybody needs to take a deep breath. Stall was called on the mark. Minnesota just a little out of sorts. Shred looking for the first multiple goal lead of the game for either side. And Bryce Merrill just took the timeout, his final one of the half, with just under 2 minutes to play in this first half. Merrill pumped as he gets his D-line off the field, a great chance for Salt Lake.
And it feels like a dangerous moment for the wind chill. They've been able to hang around thanks to a lot of, frankly, unforced errors from the Shred. And yes, credit to their defense for causing some problems, but with drops and throwaways from the Shred, Minnesota's offense has never really found the rhythm. They cough it up, and now a chance for Salt Lake to take the largest lead of the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's pretty precarious here because Salt Lake offensively has played one of the worst halves of the entire season, period. This is not the league-leading offense that we expected to see whatsoever. Minnesota, on the other hand, feels like it's surviving based on the home crowd energy. They're playing with heart, they're playing with passion. And they have to still find a way to keep it close going into halftime. I mean, if Salt Lake puts us in, they're not in dire straits. But it feels like they could be if Salt Lake gets their act together.
Shred seeking their third break of the game. Minnesota got the early break. Don't have one here in the second quarter, despite all the chances they've had.
Adams versus Lindsley, what a treat in the backfield. There's only so much you can do with that much space available.
To your point, Lindsley getting open, moving forward, throwing it to the end zone. Two Shred cutters, take your pick. It's Jacob Miller to put the Shred in front, 8-6.
Well done from Salt Lake. They stay patient. They get through some scary moments. Take a look here. This is the stall. You can see the count going off, and it just didn't get rid of it in time. And then Lindsley waiting for his option, and he gets two. Drops it in for Miller. Shred D-line has played very well. Now 3 for 5 on breaks.
D-line's had a better performance than the O-line. And here with a minute to go, Minnesota, if they don't put this in, all of a sudden you're feeling great, you're within one. The defense for Salt Lake has been pretty suffocating. Their offense hasn't found rhythm, as you said, Charlie. And I think we're seeing a lot of opportunistic double teams in a lot of situations from the Shred, flashing additional defenders into the lane, showing some creativity.
Final minute of this first half. Minnesota will start on offense in the third quarter, so a chance to score here and then score again to start the third and have us be all tied up. Official had her hands up. That completion on the reset to Brandt had not been good. It would have been called back for a foul on Salt Lake. Blading throw, but Taylor's got plenty of time. Under 20 now. To Vinoka, 5 yards out. And in the middle of the field with less than 10 seconds to go, Minnesota able to convert with Vandy Mortel.
A gutsy O point. After being 1 for 7 on Hucks early in the game, they're not working out. You can see them look off multiple open deep looks, and they just work it up against the tough Salt Lake defense. And right at the end, Bevon finding the swing pass, getting it off the sideline trap. Moving it with good pace.
And one of the things we talked about early in this game, avoiding getting broken multiple points in a row, that has not happened yet for the Wind Chill, and they're staying connected.
Now you just have to survive the last point. Joel Clutton's on there, crossing over to play this end of quarter offensive possession for Salt Lake. And they have the throwers that can get it there.
Yeah, 10 seconds enough time to get a couple throws off too. Pick up some under yards before you send it deep.
Big pull from Berglund, although it comes a little bit back toward him. Weinberg quickly for Knoll. Unmarked, Knoll just rips a deep backhand. But this one's fading. Clutton's going to need to help it get to the end zone, and he tries. But we got a one-goal game at the half, boys.
It's been a clunky offensive game, but lots of interesting moments, strategy, some big plays from both teams. But you know what? The way this game has unfolded so far, advantage Minnesota. But Salt Lake's offense, I think, will be better in the second half, given that they made a lot of unforced mistakes here in the first.
Home crowd keeping the wind chill in it.
Halftime score earlier tonight was 15-7. This is better. Salt Lake leads 8-7. Take a quick break and then get you to Toner and the crew to break it all down for you.
Welcome back to TCO Stadium as the opening night of Championship Weekend 12 continues. We've already seen the New York Empire take down the Austin Soul, and right now the Minnesota Wind Chill are neck and neck with the Salt Lake Shred. Salt Lake has an 8-7 lead. This is a much cleaner game than we saw in that first semifinal. There's significantly less wind relative to our first semifinal. 10 turnovers from Minnesota, 8 turnovers from Salt Lake. The big difference here, those blocks are coming in the deep space so far tonight. Minnesota just 2 of 8 on Hucks, and Salt Lake, Alex, 2 of 4 on Hucks.
Yeah, I think both teams should maybe settle in a little bit more, look to move the ball. I really liked what I've seen from Salt Lake's offense. They move the ball really fast. They swing it really well. They're moving it side to side. I like that. I would like to see Salt Lake keep that mentality that they've had all regular season of grinding it down the other team's throat. I think they're a little too quick to huck it right now, and I don't think it's been working out. With Minnesota, I think probably a similar thing. They've hucked to some shorter players as well. We've seen a couple of big blocks from Salt Lake, and clearly it's not working. If I was coach for Minnesota, I would tell us, let's work it, let's grind it, let's keep the ball moving, and let's try to work it into the end zone.
To your point about Salt Lake, it feels like Bryce Merrill keyed in on that a little bit too with his timeout calls. Even when they were in the red zone, he was really interested in trying to get the right set dialed in there. We got to look at Minnesota's missed opportunities. Colin, when we talk about this wind chill D-line, they are 1 of 6. Technically, they had the ball 8 times in that first half. Just converting a single break with all of those opportunities. Why is that happening? What do they need to do to clean things up in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on that at the end of the first quarter, right? There was that errant throw by Berglund that really, there's an opportunity for them there to really put themselves in a strong position after the first quarter. For me right now, we know that our defense likes to strike on a turn. I think if you're Coach Feldman, you need them to dial it back a little bit. You are winning some matchups downfield. Your defensive line is doing an okay job offensively, but there's just a few miscues, a few errant throws that I think if you clean them up, you're going to get more breaks in the second half. You've certainly had your chances.
Tuba, there's no question this crowd is on Minnesota's side. What's your assessment of the energy battle and the morale battles right now?
I think both teams have been doing a great job, right? I think that Utah has done a good job to kind of weather the first half, right? That you saw them making a few more miscues than usual. I think like both of them have mentioned, if they dialed back a little bit on their hucks, just grind it out with a lot of just cut and use their legs, they seem to be a little bit more fundamentally strong with just pushing the pace and getting the disc down the field, right? On the other end, there's a lot of pressure on Minnesota right now, right? They are the home team. This is the first time since the franchise started in 2013, right, that they've hosted it. They've also made it to this weekend, right? So that's a lot of pressure on Minnesota. So being actually basically on serve, getting the disc back going into the second half, they feel pretty good. They also need to dial back just a little bit and just work it down. The energy's been great from the crowd. I think expect the crowd to get louder as we get later into the third and fourth quarter, and every single turnover is going to really make a really big difference, right? So I always tell my team when I'm coaching, fall back on your fundamentals. So watching every single thing that you're throwing, making sure you're over-communicating to your teammates, and it's going to come down to who can limit their turnovers going to the third and fourth quarter.
Alex, have you been surprised by any of the turnovers that Salt Lake has thrown? It feels like this offense that has distributed the load so well all season long is having a few odd discs hit the turf.
Yeah, I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier. Definitely some uncharacteristic turnovers from Salt Lake, a line that's been so consistent offensively throughout the regular season. I was a little surprised to see some drops, some throwaways that just simply were like unforced, you know what I mean? I don't think Minnesota is applying that much defensive pressure, but I do think Salt Lake is feeling the nerves. Like we said, they're young. They haven't had a lot of experience in these games, and I think we're seeing it in this one.
Ian, can I ask a quick question? Really quick. So we're in halftime now, right? So I remember your assessment was that Minnesota's defense was garbage. Where are you at now? Where are you at now after watching a half against Salt Lake?
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll tone back the garbage to like a compost right now, I would say. I don't know if I want to go all the way to garbage. Maybe recycling, it's not as bad. It's you don't necessarily want it in the house 24/7. I think it's looked all right. I mean, I still don't think they've really been forcing a lot of turns, though, or really been putting that much pressure. I thought the offense of Salt Lake has looked great.
Colin, you know Ben Feldman really well. What is he saying to this group, and what adjustments do you think he's making right now in the halftime huddle?
I mean, honestly, I think in a lot of ways you can create this into a positive scenario. I think they weathered the storm in the second quarter. I think Minnesota did not play well by any means. And there was a streak there that the shred kind of got hot, and what Minnesota was able to do in that last minute, 15 seconds, to not only hold, but then to prevent another score. You're coming out second half, receiving the pull to start. You have a chance to tie up the game. Third quarter tie game. If you're Coach Feldman, that's what you wanted, right? That's your dream scenario. So you're not far off of your game plan right now.
If you'd like to learn a few
Tuba, one thing we talked about in the pregame was the potential for Salt Lake to be overwhelmed by the moment. Yes, we've seen Will Selfridge throw a red zone turnover. Sure, we've seen maybe a few uncharacteristic turnovers. I would say it seems like this group isn't too overwhelmed in the moment. What's your assessment of how this young group is looking and performing right now?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I would say they're overwhelmed, right? I do think they're playoff jitters, and that's what we've seen that on the first game. Both New York and Austin both had playoff jitters to start the game. This game actually looked a lot cleaner starting off for both teams, right? So I don't know that it's overwhelmed, but I do think they've handled the pressure really well. One thing that is hard to translate through the screen is how much pressure. This is built up not only from just this season for some of the players, but from the time they started playing Ultimate, right? So now they finally made it here, and they're having to compose themselves, work on their breathing, work on trusting the system, and I think they put together a really good product. I think we're seeing an even better product going into the third and fourth quarter.
Well, for me, honestly, the thing that I have noticed about Salt Lake that you don't really really see on the film is just how smooth their offense looks when it's running correctly. And that's been one of the most impressive things watching this team live. When it's going right, it looks really good. It looks good enough to compete with New York good. Now the thing is, can they keep up that consistency in the second half? That's my biggest question right now. They played a good first half. They've kept their nerves for the most part. Can they do that for a whole second half here?
Yeah, and I think we saw both Austin and New York's O-line settle in a little bit in the second half, and I think we'll see a little bit of the same here in this game. I think both O-lines will calm down just a little bit, and I do give the slight edge to Salt Lake in that because I think their offense is better.
Salt Lake and Minnesota with a chance to face off against the New York Empire in the championship game tomorrow. Gentlemen, who do you think is the favorite right now to face off against New York and win this game?
I'm sticking with my Salt Lake bet. I got $1 million on it, so it's not like I can switch up right now. So I'm sticking with Salt Lake.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with Minnesota. I really believe that when the pressure comes down to it, the crowd is going to get louder. We're already seeing jitters from Utah that we're not used to seeing. So I believe that we're going to see a few more jitters, and Minnesota's going to pull it off in a really tight one in the end.
Yeah, I don't think anything's changed for me either. I think it's still Minnesota. I think they're in a spot that they're comfortable with. I think they don't feel like they're overwhelmed. I think they feel confident going into the second half, so nothing changing yet.
And I'm sticking with my Salt Lake pick, so we're a panel divided once again. Second half of the second game of Championship Friday here at Championship Weekend. Salt Lake with an 8-7 lead on the hometown Minnesota Wind Chill.
Back in our spacious and cozy broadcast booth here at TCO Stadium in Eagan, Minnesota, where the Salt Lake Shred hold an 8-7 first half lead. Minnesota will be on offense to begin this third quarter, and really it was the first half where neither team played great. Both teams had their moments, and this is anybody's game as we head to the business end of it.
I mean, the stat that stands out is the 2 for 8 in hucks for Minnesota. This could be a very different game if they hit on even half of those remaining chances. You bring that up to 4 out of 8, and all of a sudden they have the lead. It felt like they had an opportunity to go up into halftime by 3 with Salt Lake drops and uncharacteristic mistakes. And now Salt Lake instead has the lead, and they played probably their worst half of offensive ultimate, O-line offensive ultimate that we've seen all season.
Well, I think both coaches are going to be in the huddles at halftime saying, hey, we're just fine. Let's go out there and clean it up in the second half. Minnesota's got to feel like, hey, we slowed their offense down. We made them make mistakes. On the other side, Bryce Merrill's telling his guys, look, we just played one of the worst halves of offensive ultimate of our season, and we're up by 1. So lots to see here in the second half.
Shred held on 5 of their 7 O points, but their O-line conversion rate was below 50%, which does not happen often for the 2023 Shred. Vinoka coming under. Thought Vinoka's skying grab early in the game was a really big moment for this Minnesota team, just to show that they can make that type of athletic play, and they got a chance to make another one. Quinn Snyder going deep, and he wins the foot race against Braden Eberhard, and he's in the end zone for the Chill to tie it up at 8.
That throw had to be exactly where it was. Snyder actually slowed down a step as he started that cut, realized the disc was going up, and then just booked it to the end zone.
It's a great throw and a great catch, but I don't think he was in.
Oh, you don't think he was in the end zone?
I think he got a little bit, maybe a home cooking. No.
I think that looked pretty good from here.
Yeah, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the eyes need to get checked.
You see, he kind of turns over the other shoulder, and then he sees the shot go up, turns on the jets, and he's in.
You're right, Charlie. Great throw, great catch. Snyder finally getting the deep game going for Minnesota.
Second assist for Abe Coffin. Officially a 64-yard shot. Just the 3rd completed huck of the game for Minnesota.
Let's go, D!
8 all. Minute into the 3rd. How clean can the Shred offense be? The wind is still blowing pretty good, Brian, even though the sun has clearly set here in the Twin Cities.
It certainly hasn't had the same effect in this game as it did in the early semifinal.
Lindsley coming underneath, marked by DeClercq, finds a wide open Kerr. Quick release forehand for Dunabile. To Jaime. Stall count rising. Jaime just throws it up and it's over Kerr's reach. Intercepted by Krennic. Third block of the game for Paul Krennic, and Winchell have a chance to retake the lead.
Huge possession here. I mean, this is the thing that's been missing, is these break conversions.
Berglund lets it rip.
He's been
easily
off.
Intercepted by Knoll.
He has been off a few missed shots.
Such an important piece to this D-line, and just, you got to be kicking yourself right now if you're Minnesota.
That's his 4th turnover.
Another break chance gone to the wayside. And they're playing well. They're making things difficult just enough here for Salt Lake.
Another floater of a throw that Jaime adjusts to. Back to Lindsley, who's been behind the disc this entire possession. His hammer into a crowd, off the hands of Dunabile and incomplete.
Unusual decision from Lindsley. A little bit impatient trying to get into the end zone.
We expect some of those decisions to maybe come from some of the younger players, but not from Lindsley in that situation.
And yet it ends as a Jordan Kerr-Callahan. The Winchell with multiple chances to take the lead, and Salt Lake's back in front courtesy of the Kerr-Callahan.
I was just getting ready to say that one of the things the Winchell has done is kind of keep Kerr from really driving the offense. And when Salt Lake's at their best, he's getting 7 assists and 3 goals. Tonight he has 2 goals. He started to get more involved on that point and then ends it with the Callahan. That's a good sign for the Shred.
He read the route. After just some chaos, and it seems like, Evan, you've been saying every single time, a weird way to hold for the offense.
Yeah.
Just a little too casual, flipping a high release. Not going to work in this wind. I mean, that's a symptom of playing at elevation. And then that Huck, this hammer, I mean, it's just a cavalcade of weird decisions.
First AUDL Callahan for Jordan Kerr. It's the 3rd Callahan of the postseason and the 41st of the 2023 AUDL season. There's been basically one Callahan every 3.8, 3.9 games this year. It's by far the most ever in the history of the league.
Moving the lineup for the poll has a huge impact on that. You're getting way more possession starting at the back of the end zone and a lot more Callahan country opportunities.
It feels like Minnesota's starting to get a little bit settled here on offense. You know, we thought that the nerves were going to slow down for Salt Lake. They've had a few mistakes, and this Minnesota offense hasn't looked quite comfortable. But right now, just swinging the disc, taking their time, being patient.
And not moving the disc as quickly as Salt Lake has for the most part, but this has been one of their smoother offensive possessions into the red zone.
The old adage, be quick but don't hurry. It fits well after a couple of turnovers earlier in the first half.
Bryce Merrill has reframed that. Playing at the pace provided has become his phrase. And the Winchell take their time and work it into the end zone, into the hands of Abe Coffin.
That's an impressive possession. Abe Coffin getting it going. And remember, Josh Klain not in this game. Scratched before the start of this semifinal, and it doesn't really feel like they've missed him that much.
I mean, maybe early on, right? But now, the way this offense is clicking in the early second half, it wasn't the easiest offensive possession, but they're working it patiently.
Where they might miss Klain is having Vandy Mortel as a handler on the D-line.
That's a great point, Evan. And you do lose a driver of that D-line.
We're going to get open.
Abe Coffin's really one of the fascinating figures in Ultimate, isn't he? 30-year-old out of the University of Arkansas. Former USA U24 guy, broken in the league with Madison, was on some of those top Dallas teams. Oh, there's a hand block by Cam Lacey. Swatted the shot from McKay Jorgensen. Another chance for the Winchell to take the lead. And I think there was contact, I'm going to call it against Minnesota. Lindsley certainly fouled the thrower on the reset, but it was complete, so they played on, and then another violation goes against Minnesota, so now they're back 20 yards from the end zone.
Let's look at this end zone defense here from the Shred, making it really tough. A lot of communication in the back of the end zone, switching cutters, and playing to each other's strengths, playing really great team defense.
Big bid from Dunabail comes up empty.
Minnesota's in the bottom half of the league in red zone conversion this season. 74.5%.
Yeah, certainly the lowest playoff team from a red zone standpoint, but through the foul, contact, and the go-ahead goal. And Minnesota should get a yardage boost to start the next possession after that sequence, but more importantly, Winchell retake the lead.
What a back and forth game we've got. Maybe just a little too much of an obvious pass coming back to that high backhand. And great hands to knock it away and get the short field. And the Shred played really good red zone defense, but patience from the Winchell, and they work it in and one.
They did call an unsportsmanlike foul on Luke Jorgensen there, so there'll be 20 yards tacked on to this pull. And yikes.
Yeah, he got him right in the face. Oh, he's getting the crowd going. He's getting the crowd going. He's up on the big screen.
Dylan DeClerc has been an energy guy his entire career. He's got the towel going on the sidelines. What a moment here at TCO Stadium.
And now it feels like a really important moment in this game for the Shred.
They haven't gotten over the yips.
Yeah, they got the 10-yard penalty against them. A short field pull for the Winchell. Some kind of holdup. Referees,
well, they're assessing the penalty, making sure everybody understands it. Salt Lake back near their own end zone, or the back of the end zone, I should say.
First outright lead for the Winchell since 4-3.
It's almost like we've been waiting for 2.5 quarters for the Salt Lake Shred team that we saw all season long to show up. And, I mean, they're running out of time.
They are.
Lindsley. Back for Luke Jorgensen. To Miller. This crowd has to give you as a defender such adrenaline to go out there and run hard.
I mean, it's good defense. It's a nice force middle here from Minnesota, cutting off the continuations, making things tough.
Double team on Dunabail. A bit of a risky throw, but Kerr tracks it down. Continues for Lindsley.
The thing is that Salt Lake still has looked structurally good. Yes, they're bogged down a little bit right now, but it has felt like self-inflicted wounds the entirety of this game.
Low throw from Kerr and an incredible low catch from Lindsley. Maybe some contact on that throw as Lindsley continues into the end zone for Jordan Kerr.
That is just what the doctor ordered for the Shred offense. A heavy dose of Kerr and Lindsley. Grant with an awesome catch. I mean, that is such a difficult play to make. And gets this game level.
It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. It didn't look as smooth as some of the other O-points that they turned over.
We see a little bit more hesitation from some of the role players on this O-line. They don't want to throw the difficult throws.
Getting a little nervous.
That's right.
Big moment. Hesitating a little bit, but like you said, you get through it, you weather that storm. Now an opportunity for the defense, which hasn't really shown up in the second half. Minnesota's looked good on offense. And this is what Bryce Merrill talked about, is that they haven't had that firepower on the defensive line waiting for the other team to make a mistake. And Minnesota's made some mistakes, but not in the second half.
It's our 9th tie of the night. Tied at every number from 1 to 10 except 7. Colin Berry wants it all. Vandy Mortel and Max DeLynn giving chase, but it's Vandy Mortel running down that backhand missile. Taylor to the end zone and a layout score from Tristan Vandy Mortel.
Deep cutter, Tristan Vandy Mortel releases from the handler space, collects the huck, and then lays out for the score to put Minnesota back in front. Wow, what a point. And the Hawks, they're starting to hit, Brian.
They are starting to hit.
He said it at halftime.
The emotion of this game and the chaos kind of has a life of its own, it feels like, for Minnesota. You know, we talked about Austin. They had the belief coming in, and that was shattered quickly. In Minnesota, it felt tenuous. They had the home crowd. But now they believe, and you can feel it. And they are saying, we can do this. We can continue to make these plays. We're making the tough throws. We're making the tough catches. And those were the ones that didn't come up with in the first half.
Wonder what's going through Jordan Taylor's mind as he releases that disc. Realize it doesn't have quite the float that he may have wanted, but it was enough. Apparently there was another call in the field, and Minnesota's going to pull 10 yards forward.
And now they're, looks like they're going to come even closer. And the referee is pointing down to the end zone as if it's going to be starting in the middle of the end zone, and that appears to be.
There was a delay of game in that the shred didn't get on the field fast enough. That could be just viewed as, yeah, they're not going to even pull. They're going to start in the reverse brick, as it's called, in the middle of the end zone.
Trusting Grant Lindsley to start with this disc.
Well, you go into the guy with the championship weekend experience in the big moments.
Lindsley and Joel Clutton, the only members of the shred with championship weekend experience before tonight. Abe Coffin, the only member of the Minnesota Wind Chill that had previously played the Final Four before tonight. Will Selfridge and Jordan Kerr, a couple guys that have potentially many more championship weekends ahead of them. At the same time today, one thing we heard from the veterans at the press conferences earlier today was, don't take these moments for granted. You never know when you're going to be able to get back or if you're going to get back. And look, for the Salt Lake Shred, after a incredible regular season where they were #1 in the league in offense, they started 11-0 before losing to undefeated New York in that incredible showcase in mid-July. Here they are, good 6 weeks later. And their season's on the brink a little bit here against the Wind Chill.
They're not moving it with the same pace they had at the beginning of the game. Looks like there was a triple team,
that's right,
called on the field. I'm going to advance the disc a little further, but they're not getting downfield continuations right now. There's no real flow. It's just hard. It's tough sledding, and they're working their way through it.
Minnesota defense making it tough for them. Luke Jorgensen gets it back for Grant Lindsley. Swings it to Will Selfridge. And Luke Jorgensen to Jordan Kerr. 11 all.
I love this flow. I love this end zone offense because Kerr takes off. Looks like he's going to be the primary receiver, and they said, you know what? Instead of going straight to you, we'll do one little pass, and that will get you opened up, and it just opens things up beautifully. Instead of one hard pass out the space that could be blocked, we just see quick movement. We see Kerr take off right here, and then it said, no, inside, then to Kerr. And that little hesitation and that little read just makes things so much easier.
What does it say to you guys that in an 11-11 game, Salt Lake has needed to complete 64 more passes than Minnesota?
Well, I think it's really a testament to Minnesota's strategy defensively. I mean, the force middle in particular, there's a lot of players on this shred O-line that do not look like they want to break the mark. And that's causing them to just kind of get out to the side, and then they have to swing it back to the middle on the reset, and they're not getting that connection. So instead, they're having to throw a million passes. Now, the last 2 possessions, they've managed to grind it out, but I think Minnesota's defense is working.
I agree. It's all part of that game plan. Make them throw a ton of passes, and it's tough sledding, and I think a lot of it is tightness of just these throwers that are like, we've had so many turnovers, I don't want to throw a turn. So I have to just make the safe 100% decision. And it's not quite to that degree. They're not super tense, but it's making life easier for the Minnesota defense.
Coffin with a chunk backhand for Snyder. Continues for Brandt. To the middle of the field for Michael Jordan.
Almost kept his feet.
It's a travel called. It's going to be a high stall situation here when it's whistled back in. Clutton comes with a double team, and I'm not sure that was the right choice because it gave the open reset in the backfield. Brandt, hammer, end zone, got it!
Will Brandt had to be perfect, and it was.
The last 2 possessions, the layout, just picking the disc off the ground, getting the hammer over the top. Minnesota, the hair on their knuckles, coming out alive.
But they're playing with more confidence than Salt Lake right now. We're seeing better mark breaking. As a result, the flow is a lot better. That's a beautiful little backhand. And then the hammer from Brandt, just sneaking over the defender.
This is a slugfest right now. This is both teams. Will Brandt, like you said, I mean, the D3 phenom. I love his game so much right now. I can't believe he's only 21 years old.
Back to work for the Salt Lake offense.
Lindsley against the double team of Berglund and Kittleson. To Jaime. Jordan Kerr at the moment, game high +6, 3 goals, 2 assists, 1 block, including the Callahan.
He's in the backfield more right now.
Looking for Miller, and that floats perfectly. For a split second, I thought his turnover free streak was in jeopardy. But what a foolish thought that was.
There was something about the way he just threw that was just instantaneous and robotic. He had no hesitation whatsoever. He just read the play like he's done it 1,000 times before and just flicks it out there. The lefty power, always being force flick.
Such a great backhand thrower.
It was so perfect.
Beautiful.
It really was. And we're seeing him more in the backfield now all of a sudden. Earlier in the game, he was really trying to be a cutter, drive the motion downfield, and he's saying, you know what? We've been turning it over. Let me go back there.
He needs more touches.
Yeah.
Kerr now leading Salt Lake in yardage, 283 yards, 3 goals, 3 assists, and no turnovers. And he was quiet in the first half.
And in a close game like this, these are the moments where you can steal a break. End of quarter situations, you can win. 40 seconds to go. This is always a weird one because, you know, you talk about holding for the last shot. As a defense, I want to really try to be risky a lot of times in the situation and force a tough throw. Either have them score where we get the last shot or we get a nice turn.
There's only been one break in this quarter. It belonged to Minnesota as Brandt unleashes the huge backhand huck. It's going to hang. Quinn Snyder jostling for position, and coming out of nowhere, Kyle Weinberg rips it down. Salt Lake with 5 seconds. Looking for the lead. Luke Jorgensen's forehand near the buzzer. Intercepted in the end zone by Tristan Vandy Mortel, and Tony Moonga was asking for a foul, and Will Brandt is like, you just jumped on top of me.
Well, regardless of who created the contact, that was not a catchable disc. So I think smartly left alone by the referees, who've had a great game, by the way. They've really officiated well tonight.
All right, 12 all, 12 minutes to play. Let's go to Ian and the crew on the game day desk.
Minnesota enters the third quarter down by 1, starts the fourth tied. What did Minnesota do to claw back into this here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it started with the end of the half like we discussed. They got themselves in a position where they could execute early on in the third quarter, and honestly, they've kind of held on for the remainder of the third quarter. And all they have to do now is use this crowd to really push them in that fourth quarter, right? Whoever's using their legs in this fourth quarter is the team that's going to win.
Tuba, you had a really interesting observation about this crowd. Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah, I think, Colin just mentioned the crowd. This is the first time Minnesota's crowd has been in a championship playoff environment, right? So for them, you're seeing and you're feeling that they're in the game so much, and they're kind of forgetting to cheer when the team's on defense. They need to be louder. They need to be hyped. They need to pour energy into that defensive unit and maybe cause a few more turnovers from the Utah offense.
Kins, 10 seconds. Anything Salt Lake can do offensively to smooth things out?
No, they just got to try to cut down on these drops. It's throws and catches at this point.
Thanks so much. Charlie, Evan, Brian, take it away.
Yeah, only one break in that third quarter. It was for Minnesota, and they took a lead. And both teams had chances to the break, obviously, but only the one conversion from the wind chill. And we got a tie game with 12 minutes on the clock. I mean, Salt Lake has the advantage because they'll be starting on offense.
Minnesota hasn't lost at home in over a year. And they've played better offense at home all season long. And I think we've seen that tonight. 93% completion percentage tonight. That's way above their average.
I still got to love, though, the coach in Tuba, criticizing the crowd, asking for more from the crowd. That's what they need, is that sideline energy. And Evan, you talked about it. 50 more throws for Salt Lake versus Minnesota.
And, in a lot of ways, Minnesota feels like they should be up by 2 or 3. They've had 9 break chances.
2 for 9, that's not.
And you think a little bit about what we were talking about earlier with Vandy Mortel coming over to the O-line. They don't have that driver on the D-line.
So Sean Knoll is currently on the injury table, getting looked at by the trainers here. He is not on the field to begin this fourth quarter for the Shred O-line.
Really interested to see if Kerr stays more downfield. They have Lindsley starting out, just getting the possession moving. And apparently they heard Coach Tuba pleading for them. The crowd's really into it right now.
Tight angled throw there. Berglund's bid unsuccessful against Jaime. Will Selfridge getting another O point to begin this fourth quarter. Shred O-line is basically an 8-person unit. No Knoll. Takes him down to 7. Selfridge coming over. No Dunabile on the field for this point either. Lindsley in the backfield.
The clerk wanted that one. I think he wished he would have left his feet.
Selfridge, I'd say if everyone on the field, he may look the freshest, and Kerr finishes the point with a lefty backhand.
Well, what it comes down to is that this Salt Lake #1 offense in the league just has to hold out, and they're going to win this game.
If it was a club game, yes, but the AUDL adds a little complexity to it, Charlie.
You are right, Evan. But that's a great point for Salt Lake. One of the more confident that we've seen.
I think you really could make the argument that both teams right now are in a dogfight because of their own mistakes. Salt Lake with the unforced errors and Minnesota with not cashing in those break chances. And now, though, you're looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, let's forget what happened in the first 3 quarters. We got a chance to go to the finals, and we're within 1. If you're Minnesota, you love that opportunity. If you're Salt Lake, you got to love that opportunity as well. But now is the time when heroes are made. It's kind of like, who is it going to be potentially for Salt Lake? You might think Joel Clutton brought him over in the midseason, known for his defensive skill. And then can Minnesota keep up the offensive trend that they've had in the second half?
Coffin to Jordan Taylor, ripping a deep backhand. Marty Adams chased by the speedy Ben Ashton. Ashton makes up the ground and swats it out the back.
The wrong shape on the throw, and Ashton's speed able to get him into position to box out and get an easy block.
That's the 3rd huck to Marty Adams this game, and every single one of them has been blocked by a taller defender and on a hanging huck. And I love Marty Adams' game, but that is not the first look.
And he had a big swing, going to give possession right back to Minnesota.
Kind of surprised we didn't see a timeout there from Bryce Merrill.
Brandt initiates for Coffin. And this time, no float on that throw to Marty Adams. All's well that ends well for the Minnesota wind chill.
Mickey, Jimmy, Joey.
Just pure wind chill crowd energy. Feels like it's willing them back in this game. And then, of course, the Salt Lake again. The mistakes.
Salt Lake has 2 fewer turnovers than the wind chill, but end of quarter situations have favored the wind chill, and so tie game.
There's some frustration going on the sideline here for Salt Lake. Miller was just having a very animated conversation with Bryce Merrill about who was going to go out on the field. It looked like for the O-line, how subs were being called. You get into these types of situations, it can be very frantic, and it's going to be over in an instant. It feels like a blur down there.
Uh-oh.
Again, beginning from the back line of the end zone. Walsh quickly sets the mark. Nice disc movement to get it out of major trouble. Long way to go on this big field. Now, Will Selfridge did not play a single O point in any of Salt Lake's previous 4 games coming into tonight. But he's out there with the season on the line, tied in the 4th quarter. Shred trying to earn the right to get a rematch with the New York Empire tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, right here. Jordan Kerr looked at the official. There's no whistle coming. Minnesota's disc with a chance to lead.
You can feel the impatience. Kerr got the disc, wanted to get the continuation. It wasn't quite a great look, and he overcooks it.
Feldman doesn't like what he sees. First sign of trouble. Get it off the sideline.
Both teams have 2 timeouts to work with here in this 4th quarter, and Feldman burns one there after Jordan Kerr's first turnover here at championship weekend.
And it's going to feel big if they end up converting this break with their O-line on the field after Bryce Merrill didn't take a timeout when they had the disc a minute ago. And just a little too aggressive of a decision there from Kerr, his first turnover of the game.
Now the question really is for Minnesota, regardless of who's on the field out of the timeout. And they're 2 for 9 on break chances so far tonight. This is number 10. Max Longchamp, one of the assistant coaches under Ben Feldman, walking off. He and Kelsey Percy have been an excellent brain trust working with Feldman, who has built this wind chill franchise up. Hosting championship weekend for the first time, and they're playing in it. Coffin made the first cut, wasn't open. Reset for Vandy Mortel. Vanoka. Chased by Chad Jorgensen. Back to Vandy Mortel, and a swing for Jordan Taylor with Clutton setting the mark. As the clock continues to tick, The tension continues to climb. Abe Coffin, big backhand. Vinoka versus Jorgensen. Vinoka makes the grab. And into the end zone, Colin Berry puts the wind chill back on top. Second time tonight, Bevon's had a chance to make a big play in the air, and he has been up to it in the biggest game of his life.
Vinoka climbing the ladder again. And that is exactly what the wind chill needed. Coffin saw him going, eyes get big, sends it up there, kind of a 50-50 ball. Vinoka gets knocked off his line, doesn't matter.
Absorbs the contact. I mean, just, he's a brick house. He's a stout man out there and can just take the physicality of the moment.
And then able to finish it off with the short forehand. Wind chill back in front.
Each team now with 3 breaks in the game. Minnesota has a 1-goal lead.
Now really you get to see if the youth will show even more for Salt Lake and the inexperience in a hostile situation with a crowd against them.
Salt Lake played great in the 4th quarter at Colorado in front of a hostile crowd. Summit took a 1-goal lead late, and then the Shred closed it strong, but Jacob Miller just got hand blocked on the mark. I think it was Ian McCoskey who got a piece of it. And a chance for Minnesota to lead by 2. Krennic rising up. Vinoka looking for space, finds it! What a moment here in Minnesota.
The wind chill don't want to hear anything about the Central Division being the weakest division. The Salt Lake Shred in the friendly, fast-paced confines of the West Division are getting punched in the mouth here in the 4th quarter. Hand block, huge play. And then Krennic with the outstretched grab. And Vinoka a little shimmy move. See you later. He gets into the end zone.
For a second, I thought it was getting ready for a Lambeau leap right there.
I think that's sacrilege here in Minnesota.
Exactly. So how will Salt Lake respond after getting broken on back-to-back points?
You cannot be afraid if you're Salt Lake. You have to go out there and play your same aggressive offense.
This is basically the Grant Lindsley D-line right now with Eberhard, Devin Terry, Will Selfridge.
And just throwing high releases like it's nothing. They're definitely not afraid.
Chad Jorgensen rips it to a wide open Kyle Weinberg. There was not a huge throwing lane there, but he found the available space to sneak it through the crowd, and the Shredder back within 1. And that point took just 31 seconds.
But they had to put the D-line out there. So now maybe advantage Minnesota.
Such a quick point, though. I mean, they're going to still be fresh, and right now it's all going to be adrenaline. The D-line's been waiting to get back out there.
Brandon, take 1 for McKay. Max, take 1 for Grant.
You got to love these moments. This is what makes Ultimate great. The home crowd's against you. Who can step up?
These are the line calling, pull out all the stop moments, too, with 6:40 to go in a 1-goal game.
It's chaos in these moments. Being down on the field, you're trying to figure out who to go. You just put out your D-line on offense. Who's fresh? Who's ready? Grant Lindsley's played 5 points in a row. He's going to keep going.
Just the 3rd D point of the game for Lindsley.
See if he can make a difference out there. He's going to set the mark on Vanny Mortel in his own end zone. To Brandt. Around the Moonga mark for Barry. Quinn Snyder with a stall count rising, finds Michael Jordan, quickly back to Vandy Mortel. Half the field down, half the field still to go for Minnesota. Up by 1 midway through the 4th quarter. Trying to earn the right to battle the
high stall.
Reigning champion Empire tomorrow. The hammer goes up to the end zone. It's Snyder that comes up with it. No goal signal yet, and we're gonna get interference on the offense, which is gonna give Salt Lake the disc.
Wow, that is such a late call, but I think it's the right call. I couldn't believe they didn't see to blow the whistle immediately, because I think this was a foul against Grant Lindsley. And if we watch right here, well, Lindsley ends up getting tripped up, but it's Johnny Hoffman who got fouled.
Did he get fouled or did he just lose his feet?
Let's see it again. So he's in position here, and he does kind of trip, but maybe over his own foot.
Wow, Salt Lake disc, 5:30 to go. It's just a 1-goal game, and Lindsley's looking for the tie. Johnny Hoffman can't get it. Quinn Snyder there for the block.
Somewhere, someone's saying, just don't lie.
That place would be Eagan, Minnesota, and the people would be the fans of the Minnesota Wind Chill.
Well, here we go again.
Yeah, this is great stuff. 5 minutes to go, 1-goal game, great crowd. Colin Berry hucking, Quinn Snyder deep, but it's knocked down again by the Salt Lake defense, and Johnny Hoffman mimics Snyder. And we get a quick timeout from Bryce Merrill. Clock stops with 4:46 to go.
Incredible stuff.
Somewhere Alex Atkins is smiling about the mimicked celebrations that we're seeing here tonight.
The tension on every possession right now is intense.
You gotta love hucking to Quinn Snyder. But in this instance, you had a wide open underneath play. We're seeing here the block first. And then Colin Berry says, I like Snyder going deep. I have a wide open under, but I'm going to ignore it.
Sent it deep. Just a great play by Hoffman. Keep in mind, I mean, this really should be a wind chill score, because it really looked like Hoffman tripped himself.
It's a tough call. It's a bang call.
It was close.
You can understand why it was made. I mean, your first instinct was it was the right call.
I thought it was a foul, watching in real time.
Lindsley's going to see a double team here. Madison to Clerk. Brandon Mattis, by the way, looking for his 100th career block. That'll be the next one he gets.
Feels like double clutching is going to become the norm here for Salt Lake's O-line. Just making sure everything's okay before they deliver the pass.
This is a break chance for the Shred. Who knows how many more chances they'll get in the final 4.5 minutes.
Ooh. Mattis flying through.
Kerr at midfield.
And now they're back to their normal pace. Just keeping it moving. Going back the other way.
Kerr to the end zone for the tying goal. Jace Dunabile has it, despite the insane bid from Noah Hansen, who was millimeters away from horizontal happiness.
Tie ball game. What a grinder possession again. This Shred offense able to maintain possession, and such a quick snap throw into the end zone from Kerr.
He's so good in these situations just because of this. Turn and fire immediately.
No double clutch from Kerr right there.
You're not wrong. And that's what they need.
And the angle change, because he's a lefty, opens that space up a little bit more. Right-handed player is not going to get that disc into the end zone.
Minnesota had a 15-13 lead with 7:11 to play. But now we're tied again. Under 4 minutes left. Wind chill. Back on offense and a mishandled roller in the end zone. Will Brandt is going to have this on the sideline, halfway into the end zone. Retreating a little further. Coffin back for Brandt. Can't go backward anymore. Oh, great fake by Coffin. Selfridge poached the lane and Taylor got open and hits the sliding Jordan coming underneath.
High stall. There it is.
It's a stall called with just over 3 minutes to play, and Salt Lake has another chance to retake the lead. And we're going to get a delay of game because he didn't wait for the whistle on the restart, so he's going to have to retreat back 10 yards. Clock continues to tick. Got to wait for the whistle to restart play. Weinberg just picked it up and threw it before the whistle came. So back to midfield, Ashton. Will Selfridge. Timeout, Salt Lake. It'll be the Shreds' final timeout with 2:36 to play.
Bryce Merrill's fired up, and I think that's a great timeout call. You want to drop a play, you're almost into the red zone already, and this could be the decisive point of this game.
The question is, do you play a normal offense, or are you just saying, hey, Jordan Kerr, Grant Lindsley, take me home? I think they're going to play the normal way they play. I don't think they're going to do anything special here.
Selfridge is going to stay out there, the 20-year-old who just turned 20 in July. Never touched the disc once in the LA game. Only played defense down the stretch of the regular season.
You never know who the hero is going to be in the chaos of these moments and what you're going to go to, and your instinct takes over. You need to find something. The Salt Lake O-line was riddled with mistakes all game long, and yet here they are with a chance to take the lead.
And you know that the New York Empire leadership is just like, go to overtime, go to double overtime. Grant Lindsley was fouled on the mark. Dylan DeClerc thought he had the hand block. The crowd doesn't like it, but Salt Lake will maintain possession, it appears. Again, Lacey hitting the head. Lacey apologetic. Grant said earlier today he has felt no ill effects of the terrifying injury he experienced last October. Over the past few months, he's been back healthy, feels incredibly lucky and fortunate. Lindsley, of course, the elder statesman on this Salt Lake roster.
Oh, nice move.
Oh, Jordan Kerr, full extension to maintain possession, flipping it into the end zone for Luke Jorgensen. Salt Lake fans going crazy here in Minnesota.
The swings in this game. Free yards given on penalties, and then Kerr with the huge layout to save possession, and then zips the backhand up into the end zone and puts Salt Lake back on top.
I think that's the most edge I've seen him play with. A little bit of snarl coming out of that. You know, he wants to be one of the best players in the game. He's in the MVP conversation. You have to make plays like that in these big moments.
On the AUDL All-Rookie team 2 years ago when he played for the Spiders. First team All-AUDL last year.
It was 13-12 Salt Lake after the first point in the fourth, and then 3-0 run from Minnesota, 3-0 answer from Salt Lake.
What will Minnesota's response be in the final 90 seconds of regulation? Benny Mortel sees the double. Ben Feldman does have a timeout in his pocket if he feels the urge. Brandt going cross field, and it was low, but he got lucky. That was not intended for Colin Berry on the release. He was going for the back corner of the end zone. He just didn't have the angle, but it worked out. Brandt finishes the point, and we're tied with 1:01 remaining.
If you're Bryce Merrill, Brian, what are you telling your O-line here with 1 minute on the clock?
I think you have to just play the way you know how to play. I think anything different here, this team has been full of nerves this entire game. If they're worried about the clock situation, if they're worried about holding it or doing something different, that's just another variable. They already have the crowd against them. They've already undergone a game where they haven't played their best. Keep it normal.
And it certainly goes without saying, you can't turn it over.
Something tells me we got a little bit of chaos left.
It's been a chaotic game.
Just a little. Cameron Lacey with a backhand pull. Under a minute to go. Winner faces New York tomorrow night for the championship. How about the trust in 21-year-old McKay Jorgensen out on the field here. Will Selfridge, the 20-year-old's going deep. Lindsley puts it up, and Selfridge can't come up with it. Quick timeout from Ben Feldman with 30 seconds to go. I mean, the Salt Lake body language is bad. They're looking like they're in disbelief right now. This game is far from over.
Well, Selfridge read it wrong and didn't. He stopped short and went up for it early and still could have made the catch. But now you have this kind of chaotic situation where, like you said, the body language for Salt Lake was stunned. And you call a timeout and let the defense get back on the field and set. It's one of those hard situations of instinct and gut check times. I mean, I love getting the offense on the field to go win the game.
I don't like the decision from Grant Lindsley there to throw that huck. I know Selfridge got a step, but he had 2 defenders on him. And we really haven't seen Lindsley throwing hucks in all this entire game. And he sends it. And you can see why. I mean, he's got a guy down there, but I don't know. If Selfridge runs that out, I think it's going to be a block for Minnesota.
I don't think you're wrong in the second look. I think that Selfridge tried to make the best play he could, and he almost made a phenomenal grab. But let's see here, Bevon being fronted right away.
So much time.
With Brandt. I mean, does he just send this? Thinks better of it.
Very aggressive on the marks.
That's a good swing from Will Brandt. We're under 30 seconds. Both teams are out of timeouts. Tied at 16. Brandt shoots it this time. Quinn Snyder, chased by Clutton. Minnesota leads.
The fearless Will Brandt does it again. There's time on the clock for Salt Lake, but Minnesota retakes control.
It's just incredible. They had the opportunity to send it early, and Brandt didn't like it in rhythm, came back around, and then a great deep receiver in Snyder. When you get steps like that, even against a good deep defender in Clutton. Now the question is, the polls matter in these moments. Can you pin him deep? Can you make it so that way a prayer doesn't even go up? This is enough time for Salt Lake to get a chance. A good look at the end zone.
Joe Clutton is out there for height purposes. Salt Lake needs to score. Jordan Kerr with 11 seconds, back for Jorgensen. Chad Jorgensen launches a backhand toward the end zone. This is going to be the game. Joe Clutton battling for position. He tips it to the end zone where it's caught by Elijah Jaime at the buzzer to tie the game. Incredible awareness from Clutton, and we've got overtime tonight here in the Twin Cities. Unbelievable.
A stunned crowd in complete disbelief. Joel Clutton, he tried it earlier. He was in a position at the end of the first half where he tried to tip it. This time, look at this. It looks like a basketball tip and into the end zone for the score. I've never seen anything like it.
I mean, I'm speechless. What more can you say? That's just an incredible play, incredible awareness.
(17-17). 5 more minutes on the clock. And we'll have a coin toss. And we'll have overtime at championship weekend for just the second time in the history of the league. The first was when the Flyers beat the Chicago Union a couple years ago in Washington, D.C. A stunned crowd here in Minnesota, and yet everybody needs to regroup. Just an incredible night of Ultimate here in the Twin Cities. We welcome you back to our broadcast booth with Charlie and Brian. I mean, Salt Lake was this close to being done, and yet now they're still alive, and this is anybody's game, and it's about who can refocus best.
I'm in disbelief right now. When we saw the throw go up, it seemed so clear that it wasn't going to be enough. It was too short. There were too many players underneath it. There was no way there was going to be some catch and toe the line in the end zone. But Clutton coming up with the play somehow, and what a move to put him on the field for this moment, just thinking maybe we're going to need somebody tall. And just as good a heads-up play as you'll ever see.
I mean, what else can you say about it? It's just backyard play. Everybody thinks about this, you know, all the types of greatest and trick plays you can do. This is something you dream about when you're a kid. And to actually do it in the biggest game of the season, to save the season.
And Joel Clutton was not on the Shred roster most of the year. He moved to Las Vegas. He wasn't living in Utah anymore, but Bryce Merrill kept in touch, and they added him for the home stretch to add a little bit more size. They lost some of their top defenders from a year ago. And man, that was a good late season contract. Let's listen to the coin toss here.
Salt Lake will receive to start the first overtime. Good luck.
Salt Lake to receive to start the first overtime, which means if we are tied after 5 minutes, it would be Minnesota on offense for the climactic universe point if we get that far.
We're a long way away, but it might be destiny.
The fourth quarter, we came into the quarter as tied 12-12. Salt Lake takes the lead. Minnesota takes the lead with a 3-0 run. They go up by 2, 15-13.
With that foul call, phantom potentially foul call.
Right, and then 3-0 run to take the lead back for Salt Lake. And then we see a break for Minnesota to go back in front, and it's looking like that's going to be it. And then somehow the Shred tie it up. It was tied at 12s, 13s, 15s, 16s, and now 17s as we go into overtime.
We're going to win this game, but it starts with this one. Okay? Shred on three, shred on three. 1, 2, 3, shred!
And I guess the question now is, who does it favor? I mean, Minnesota had all the momentum at the end of that fourth quarter, with the Shred, you know, hanging to a Shred to be in this game. But Minnesota has the home crowd.
Well, they need to get that home crowd back, because when Quinn Snyder scored the go-ahead goal to go up 17-16, this place was electric. And then when Elijah Jaime catches that deflection, it was completely stunned. As you see the numbers after regulation.
We don't need the numbers anymore in this one.
99 more completions for the Shred, including that last one, which officially is Chad Jorgensen to Elijah Jaime for the game-tying score with no time left.
It's all going to come down to one play, who's got the legs, who worked hardest in the gym.
Well, it seems like it might come down to 5 more crazy plays. These games are just chaos. They're just a blur of emotion, and at that point, you're kind of feel like you're riding a roller coaster that you don't know where it's going to go next. And you just are along for this ride of sequence events that are happening to you instead of shaping it. And sometimes that's a good thing because you're playing in the zone and you're just going. But then you saw Grant Lindsley. He has been so clutch. Won the World Games on a huck to Jack Williams for Team USA. Throws that one up to Selfridge. That was a tougher decision. Low margins, tight margins for error.
But you know he's going to be on the point.
You know he doesn't care.
The rest of the way. Yeah.
I mean, he cares, but
short memory.
Yeah,
It's made him one of the greats.
Salt Lake wins this game. I wonder what role Will Selfridge has tomorrow against New York. He only played D-line against him last time. He's only played offense here down the stretch. He's really played everything, but they haven't had an O point without Selfridge on the field. And here we go. 5 minutes on the clock. Each team gets one timeout, and the pull rolls through the pack. Got down there so quick that Salt Lake's still able to get a little daylight, but then nearly throwing it into trouble. And we got a pick downfield that will halt the forward momentum.
More adversity for Salt Lake's offense.
We got another pick, I think, yeah. Dunabile obstructed Hansen's pathway, trying to keep pace with Selfridge. The two young guys, Hansen and Selfridge, speeding around the field together. Double teamed in the end zone. Lindsley swings it. Here's Jordan Kerr. He had a turn late in the game that could have been incredibly costly. It's a blank slate to begin the OT. Elijah Jaime in the shred turn it. How about Tanner Barkas getting his fingertip in the throwing lane?
So many coaches have been becoming so close to getting those blocks.
And Ben Feldman elects to use his only timeout. Less than 90 seconds into the overtime to try to take advantage of the turn. And punch in the break.
Minnesota's defense deserves a lot of credit this game. They've done a fantastic job of reading the rhythm of Salt Lake. It's one thing to move it quickly. There's an advantage to that. But once you get in sync defensively, you can come away with errors where you see someone open, you just throw it right away.
Selfridge just miscalculating on where that pass needed to be. And you'll see it here. Just a little too inside. And, you know, you put the youngster out on the field, he has not been in this situation.
By far the biggest moment he's ever been in. Nothing else really compares.
A lot of trust from the coaching staff. With the mistake, and now it's going to come down to this Salt Lake D-line.
I think it's a matter here of clearing out and getting Devon isolated in space. He's been the hero of the game so far for Minnesota.
Brandt for Vandy Mortel.
Really good switches off of it, gives Salt Lake the advantage.
And McKay Jorgensen out there on defense. He was poaching off a coffin, but into the end zone for the lead. Minnesota back on top again. Tristan Vandy Mortel, no matter where the wind chill put him, seems to come up huge.
It's just a steadying presence. But he's been playing in a very dynamic way this game, from getting deep cuts, now the up line, throwing the break throws, doing whatever is needed for Minnesota.
250 yards of offense, 2 goals and a block for Vandy Mortel, and no turnovers. I mean, it's feeling like a really savvy move from the coaching staff and the wind chill to put him onto the O-line today with Josh Klain out of the lineup.
Yeah, we don't know why Josh Klain is out of the lineup, whether it was a healthy scratch or had a late injury. But you're right, that handler trio of Tristan, Abe Coffin, and Will Brandt has been a steadying presence in the second half.
Selfridge out there again on offense with Kerr, the Jorgensen brothers, the O-line versions. Lindsley, Jaime, and Miller. Salt Lake broken on the first point here in overtime. And if you haven't just joined us and you've been with us for a while, you know that this game has had many, many, many twists and turns.
The Salt Lake offense feels a little tired. Not as quite much movement downfield. The legs don't seem as fresh. Still working it through, being patient.
Kerr cross midfield from Miller. Got Selfridge going, peeling off to Clerk. Selfridge can't get there. 2:20 to go. Winchell with the disc, up 1.
Critical moments here. Miller had his man, but just way too much angle on this pass. And it could be tiredness, not stepping down into that throw.
Backwards reset in the Callahan country, but nice adjustment made to it. Adams coming underneath. Minnesota technically doesn't need to score. If they could just complete passes for the next 2 minutes, this game is over, and the Winchell are moving on. And the disc is on the ground. Do we have contact? The sideline official says yes.
I think that's a good call.
DeClercq shaken up again. Officials are going to stop the clock here with a $1:31 left in overtime. Minnesota doesn't have a timeout, so this is the group they got to ride with. They do get a little bit of a breather, and with a chance to get an O-liner on the field with DeClercq's injury. Will Brandt's coming on.
A lot of contact to the back. And you know, I wonder if there hadn't been contact, would it have been a completion? It's not clear.
I might trying to make a really tough play and can't make that without creating contact. Marty Adams in the lane, but Salt Lake sitting underneath.
Bryce Merrill has raved about how fantastic New York's O-line defends after a turn. The Shred need to dial up a little bit of that defensive magic, and the disc is on the ground and there's no whistle. Mickey Walsh was there for the reset, but Salt Lake has it just a few yards away. Jordan Kerr throws the equalizer, and we're tied again with a $1:14 left in OT.
And it looked like there was possible contact on this block. It looked like maybe a hand slap that was missed. And that's a tough call in this situation, but it looked pretty much like a foul live. We'll have to see.
It's hard to tell. Maybe chops the arm as he's coming across. And
easy O-line score.
Yeah, I mean, Mickey Walsh looked like he could believe that there wasn't an integrity call there.
I'll say it did not look like an obvious foul from watching the replay. Maybe there was a little contact, maybe he just doinked the disc.
The Salt Lake team feels like it has 9 lives though.
Clock rolling toward a minute. Yikes, that disc almost touched by Coffin, lands inbounds. Got to start from right there. Already seen one Callahan tonight. Chad Jorgensen defending in the end zone. Vandy Mortel throws it into the ground. Salt Lake with the clock ticking. Does Bryce Merrill use his timeout, or does he trust his D-line to convert on the goal line?
Brilliant defensive maneuver there. Double teaming and then dropping back into coverage.
And Salt Lake is back in front. Are you kidding me? Maonga makes it 19-18 Shred with 34 seconds left.
Wow. And we've seen such steady play from this Winchell offense for most of the second half. And then just a critical mistake.
The throw he will want back.
And the defense there, right before we see that throwaway, the double team had come over to put a little extra pressure on the mark and then drop back into cover the reset, and I think that's what caused the throwaway.
Well, there's still 34 long seconds left, so I think 3 turnovers and 3 scores can happen.
You know, if Minnesota can score here before the buzzer or at the buzzer, then they would receive in double overtime. A lot can happen in these next 25 seconds. Wind chill do not have a timeout. Paul Krennic.
They're running out of time.
Back to Vandy Mortel, 15 seconds. A big swing that takes some more time off the clock. They're down to 10. Vandy Mortel going the wrong way with 5. Coffin with a backhand. It's gonna be short of the end zone. Can they pull off a Clutton deflection? It's tipped, but it lands incomplete, and it is all over. And the Salt Lake Shred winning in overtime, 19-18 to advance to Saturday's championship game. Both teams are in disbelief, but it's the Shred that leaves smiling. And we got chapter 2 of Salt Lake and New York tomorrow night.
Just go ahead and take number 77 and put it in the rafters. Joel Clutton needs his number retired after this one, somehow sending this team through to the final with his brilliant play at the end of regulation. I do not know how Salt Lake managed to win this game.
Someday we'll research it, we'll analyze it, and we're going to figure it all out. But today we're just going to enjoy it. What an incredible game.
And just really a terrible final possession for the Wind Chill. And the attempt to send it into the end zone comes up short. That's one of the wildest games that I've seen a championship weekend in a long time.
And there have been some good ones. And look, this Minnesota Wind Chill team gave everything they had. They just fall a tiny bit short. That Joel Clutton deflection immediately goes into the transcendent championship weekend moments. I was thinking earlier this afternoon, like, you never know what you're going to see. You never know who's going to be the hero. And Salt Lake still had work to do. If they lose in overtime, we're probably not talking about it, but they get broken in the first point of OT, and they rally back and take advantage of the only mistake of the day from Tristan Vandy Mortel, who just played great in every single aspect until that errant throw in his own end zone in overtime.
And Jordan Kerr, I mean, what a game. He had 2 assists in the first half, kind of a quiet start, and then he comes back with 5 assists, 3 goals, a block, ends up with 459 yards of offense, a masterful second half performance and overtime.
We're joined by Grant Lindsley down on the sidelines. Grant, congratulations, you're moving on. You get another crack at New York, but before we talk about the Empire, can you talk about the effort it took and how many lives y'all had tonight to survive in advance against the Wind Chill?
Yeah, man, you might as well call us the AlleyCats because it seemed like we had 9 lives to spare. Oof, and I killed about 3 of them, maybe 4. So we won that one by the skin on our teeth. And yeah, I mean, obviously it feels good to win.
Well, what was it like seeing Joel make that play at the end of regulation?
Huge. I mean, surreal to for me to blow it at with 30 seconds left on that huck, and then for us to escape with a jump ball that Joel had the presence of mind to tip to Jaime in the end zone. I mean, that was great. Saved the game.
Was there anything you said to the team in the fourth quarter when all the chaos or going into overtime? Any words of wisdom you had for the O-line to settle down?
Not really. I mean, we missed Sean Knoll. He went down with an injury maybe around midway through the game, so I stepped into the kind of the backfield a little bit more. Not a lot of words of wisdom for me, honestly. I mean, I was making some throwing errors, so I was kind of trying to lean on my teammates a little bit more than provide wisdom.
What did this game feel like down there with this great crowd creating such an epic atmosphere and all the twists and turns? I mean, you had a 3-0 run, they had a 3-0 run. It was back and forth in a way that you don't often see in the AUDL.
It was great. The atmosphere was amazing. We really felt like the away team. You know, when they would score, when we would turn it over, the crowd would go nuts. And you know, that's fun. I'd rather have 3,000 people cheering against me than an empty stadium. That was a blast.
What are your early thoughts as you think about facing New York again tomorrow? You sneak by today, they cruise by, but tomorrow everybody starts with a blank slate.
Hey, you know, I mean, I think it's cool that the New Rochelle Empire, small market teams, just able to put a group together that's competing, you know, and they've made it here. So we've got the experience, we've got the athleticism, and frankly, we've got the money. So we're just going to lean into our advantages and overpower them.
All right, great stuff. Hey, can you throw the headset on Joel Clutton? He's put it down, and he's a couple of paces to your right. I want to ask him real quick, if we can, about the play at the end of regulation. Thanks so much, Grant. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what Joel has to say. What a crazy game. The fans
Joel,
did everything they could.
thanks for joining us. What was going through your mind in the final moments of regulation? Take us through it.
Well, you know, I had the end of quarter situation that I kind of messed up, got a little practice round the first time around, so got another shot at it, and you know, I was able to look around and just, I saw a jersey back there, and I was like, maybe it's one of our guys. Let's hope for the best. And sure enough, Jaime was there to catch it. So that was fun.
I gotta ask if you played basketball, because it looked like a center tipping it back in at the buzzer.
No, I never played basketball, but I grew up playing some ice hockey, so I don't think that would have helped me much.
I mean, how did your team pull this one out, Joel? Even after you get that equalizer, you get broken on the first point of overtime, and yet you continue to fight and scrap and somehow survive.
You know, there was belief throughout the whole game. Guys on the sideline were like, we're going to have a fun time when we're up at the end of this game. And we never stopped believing. And, you know, anytime you get here, it's hard to win these games. And there's going to be a lot of swings one way and the other. And it just matters who, you know, has more points at the end of the game. And so we never stopped believing and came out on top. Got a little lucky, but, you know, we'll take it.
Did it ever cross your mind that if you hadn't made a different choice late in the season, you might have been watching this game from back home instead of playing in it here tonight?
Yeah, you know, that would have been fun to watch it too. I'm sure, you know, sometimes they lost the one game this year with me on the roster too, so you never know. Maybe I'm hurting him in the long run, but you know, it's fun to be back.
What do you hope to bring against the Empire tomorrow and get that revenge with everything on the line?
I like that we played them once, so you know, it kind of takes the fear out of it, where it's like, oh man, we're playing New York. All the guys have matched up against these guys, and they're like, you know what, they're a good team. We know what we got to do to compete. I think last time our game plan was good. You know, maybe a few tweaks here and there, but it's really just going to come down to execution. And in finals, anybody can win. It just, you know, matters who kind of gives the most effort and kind of gets the breaks to go their way. So we're going to try to go out there and force some breaks to go our way.
Well, technically the assist on your deflection belongs to Chad Jorgensen, but we'll forever remember that iconic deflection to send the game to overtime, and it'll be bigger if you can make it bigger tomorrow. So get some rest tonight and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Congratulations.
I appreciate it, guys. Have a good night.
Joel Clutton with the heroic play as time expired at the end of regulation, and the Salt Lake Shred, by the slimmest of margins, lived to see another day. They win it in overtime, 19-18. Full post-game coverage still to come with Ian Toner, Tuba Benson, Jaja, Colin Camp, and Alex Atkins over at our game day set. You can stay right here on AUDL.tv. That's coming up in just moments from now. Brian Jones, quick final thought as we head into Salt Lake, New York, Chapter 2 tomorrow night.
Salt Lake has 9 lives. To use 8 of them. They're going to have to keep a hold of one of them for tomorrow.
Charlie?
I just feel like tomorrow's a new day. And even though we saw New York dominate and Salt Lake really struggle and somehow survive, the matchup is totally different tomorrow. I think the Shred will compete.
See who the crowd's rooting for, too. There's Minnesota contacts on both teams. It's going to be very interesting. Stay tuned for the Game Day Show. Thanks for being with us tonight from Minnesota. For Brian Jones and Charlie Eisenhood and our entire crew, Evan Lepler saying good night, Salt Lake. Moving on, barely.